Hello and welcome. In a major development, Hong Kong leader Carrie Lam has withdrawn the controversial extradition bill that triggered months of protests and the city's worst political crisis. Now, Lam's announcement came after she chaired an internal meeting with pro-establishment lawmakers and Hong Kong delegates of China's National People's Congress. The announcement on formal withdrawal of the controversial bill meets one of the main demands of the pro-democracy protesters. The Beijing-backed leader made the announcement in a televised statement on Wednesday.
政府會正式撤回條例草案，完全釋除市民嘅疑慮。保安局局長會喺立法會復會後，按議事規則動議撤回條例草案。呢2個多月發生嘅事，令每一個香港人都感到震驚同埋傷心，亦令大家對香港感到焦慮同埋痛心。大家都好焦急，希望可以盡快走出目前嘅困局。由今個月開始，我同所有司局長會走入社區，同市民對話，等社會各個階層、唔同政治立場、唔同背景嘅人士，透過對話平台，將種種嘅不滿直接講出嚟，一齊去探討解決方法。
Responding to Carrie Lam's announcement, pro-democracy activist Joshua Wong took to Twitter to express outrage at the late announcement. He said, and I quote, "Too little and too late." Now, Carrie Lam's response comes after 7 lives sacrificed, more than 1,200 protesters arrested, in which many are mistreated in police station. The intensified police brutality in the previous weeks have left an irreversible scar to the entire HK society, and therefore, at this very moment, when Carrie Lam announced withdrawal, people would not believe it is a sincere move, unquote. Now remember, Hong Kong has been rocked by mass demonstrations since June. The protests have been ongoing in response to the proposed law by Carrie Lam's administration, which would have allowed suspects to be extradited to mainland China. Although the Hong Kong government later suspended the legislation in face of the mass protests, with Lam even declaring the bill as dead, but Hong Kong authorities refused to officially retract it. And WION Lisbon's Patrick Falk is live with us from Hong Kong. Good evening, Patrick. What have the protesters on the ground been saying now? The withdrawal of the bill has been a primary demand, but the protest has become a bigger movement seeking greater autonomy. Now, pacify them, or do the protests continue?
Yeah, well, that's just very hard to say, and Joshua Wong isn't the only one that said it's too little, too late. Almost immediately after the recording that Lam issued, which was broadcast on air at about 6 p.m. local time, Pan Democrats, that's the opposition alliance, held a press briefing of their own to say the same. This was too little, too late. And of course, if you remember, the rallying cry for the protesters over the past several weeks is all 5 demands must be met. And a lot of people will be saying that this is Lam doing the very least to try and defuse the crisis at this time. And of course, the big demand that the protesters really want is for Hong Kong to enact universal suffrage. It's very difficult to see how exactly we can go down that road, or how Hong Kong can go down that road. And notably, you know, Carrie Lam isn't withdrawing the bill just yet. That won't happen until the start of the Legislative Council, when that restarts in October, rather, and that's when the Secretary for Security, John Lee, will table a motion to formally withdraw the bill. And you know, a lot of people will see that as a possible bargaining chip to ensure that the celebrations on October 1st, marking the founding, the 70th anniversary of the founding of the PRC, goes smoothly. So there is a little bit of wiggle room, and things could still change yet.
And Patrick, specifically about the key demand of an independent probe into the alleged instances of police brutality, what has Carrie Lam promised so far?
Well, look, she hasn't changed her stance on that as such. She has said that given the situation and taking everything into consideration, that they don't want to go down that route, and that's something that she's already said previously. But she has made efforts to make the police complaints council a little bit strengthened. Remember the concern that it wasn't independent. That was the main issue that protesters had with it. So she said that aside from including foreign advisors, foreign experts to join in on those investigations, she's also introduced two other members that are seen as being independent to try and beef up that investigative commission. But it's hard to see that entirely satisfying the protesters. They do still want an independent commission into the police action that's happened over the last few months.
Indeed, and very quickly, Patrick, let's talk a bit about the protesters themselves now. We are in the 14th week of the protest. What's the future of the protest going to be like? Are they going to be called off, or do they still insist on the other demands that they've been asking for?
Well, I think it's you can see that obviously the radical, or the most radical of the protesters, are perhaps going to continue the fight and try to put pressure on the government to have the 5 key demands met. So, but for the time being, there's not an awful lot scheduled on the protest calendar, if you like, besides the weekly class boycott. And a lot of people think that a lot of people are saving their energy. The protesters are saving their energy for October 1st, and that's going to be something that's very worrying indeed for Beijing, because they won't want those celebrations spoiled.